A guy has been asking the prettiest girl in town for a date and finally she agrees to go out with him. He takes her to a nice restaurant and buys her the gourmet dinner with expensive wine. On the way home, he pulls over to the side of the road in a secluded spot. They start necking and he's getting pretty excited. He starts to reach under her skirt and she stops him, saying she's a virgin and wants to stay that way. Well, okay, he says. How about a job? Yuck, she screams. I'm not putting that thing in my mouth. He says, well then how about a job? I've never done that, she says. What do I have to do? Well, he answers, remember when you were a kid and you used to shake up a Coke bottle and spray your brother with it? She nods. Well, it's just like that. So he pulls it out and she grabs hold of it and starts shaking it. A few seconds later, his head flops back on the hardest. His eyes close. Snot starts to run out of his nose. Wax blows out of his ear and he screams out in pain. What's wrong? She cries out. Take your thumb off the end. A small tourist hotel was all abuzz with an afternoon wedding in which the groom was 95 and the bride was 23. The groom looked pretty feeble and the feeling was that the wedding night might kill him because his bride was a healthy, vivacious young woman. But lo and behold, the next morning the bride came down the main staircase slowly, step by step, hanging onto the banister for dear life. She finally managed to get to the counter of the little shop in the hotel. The clerk looked really concerned. Whatever happened to you, my dear? You look like you've been wrestling an alligator. The bride groaned, hung onto the counter and managed to speak. Oh God! He told me he'd been saving up for 75 years, and I thought he meant his money. Once in medieval times, there was a king who was getting sort of bored after dinner one night. He decided to hold a contest of who at the court had the mightiest weapon. The first knight stood up and proclaimed that he had the mightiest weapon. He pulled down his pants and tied a 5-pound weight around it. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The woman swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. And the band played appropriate music. Another knight stood up and yelled that he had the mightiest weapon. He dropped his pants and tied a 10-pound weight to himself. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The woman swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. And the band played appropriate music. After several more knights tried to prove their superiority, the king finally spoke out. I have the mightiest weapon of all of them. He dropped his pants and tied not a 10-pound, not a 20-pound, not ever a 30-pound, but a 40-pound weight to himself. The weapon doth rose. The crowds cheered. The women swooned. The children waved multicolored banners. And the band played God Save the Queen. A guy is walking along a beach when he comes across a lamp partially buried in the sand. He picks up the lamp and gives it a rub. 2 genies appear and they tell him he had been granted 3 wishes. The guy makes his 3 wishes and the genies disappear. The next thing he knows, he's in a bedroom in a mansion surrounded by 50 beautiful women. He makes love to all of them and begins to explore the house. Suddenly he feels something soft under his feet. He looks down and the floor is covered in $50 bills. Then there is a knock at the door. He answers the door and standing there are the 2 genies. They drag him outside to the nearest tree, throw a rope over a limb and hang him by the neck until he is dead. As the genies walk off, one genie says to the other one, "Hey, I can't understand the first wish having all these beautiful women in a big mansion to make love to. I can also understand him wanting to be a millionaire, but to be well hung is beyond me." A It was a married couple who were in a terrible accident. The woman's face was burned severely. The doctor told the husband they couldn't graft any skin from her body because she was so skinny. The husband then donated some of his skin. However, the only place suitable to the doctor was from his buttocks. The husband requested that no one be told of this because, after all, this was a very delicate matter. After the surgery was completed, everyone was astounded at the woman's new beauty. She looked more beautiful than she ever did before. All her friends and relatives just raved about her youthful beauty. She was alone with her husband one day, and she wanted to thank him for what he had done. She said, "Dear, I just want to thank you for everything you did for me. There is no way I could ever repay you." He replied, "Oh, don't worry, honey. I get plenty of thanks every time your mother comes over and kisses you on your cheek." A rather well-proportioned young lady, Joanne, spent almost all of her vacation sunbathing on the roof of the hotel. She wore a bathing suit the first day, but on the second, being naturist, she decided that no one could see her way up there, and she slipped out of it for an overall tan. She had hardly begun when she heard someone running up the stairs. She was lying on her stomach, so she just pulled a towel over her rear. "Excuse me, miss," said the flustered little assistant manager of the hotel, out of breath from running up the stairs. "The hotel doesn't mind you sunbathing on the roof, but we would very much appreciate you wearing a sunbathing suit as you did yesterday." "What difference does it make?" Joanne asked rather calmly. "No one can see me up here, and besides, I'm covered with a towel." "Not exactly," said the embarrassed little man. "You're lying on the dining room skylight." One day, a little girl and a little boy were at the park with their pants pulled down. The little girl asked the little boy, "What is that?" And the little boy said, "I don't know." Then the little boy asked the little girl the same thing, and she said she didn't know. So that night, the little girl asked her mom, and her mom said, "That's your garage, and you must not let any big trucks go in." Meanwhile, at the little boy's house, the little boy asked his dad what it was, and his dad said, "That's your big truck, and you must not park it in any garage." The next day, the boy and the girl pulled their pants down again, but this time the girl went home with blood on her hands. Her mom screamed and asked why she had blood on her hands. The girl said, "The boy tried to put his big truck in my garage, so I pulled his two back tires off."